Okay, my friends, get yourself ready. We're going to look into the Baigong pipes. They're over in China. Nobody can explain them. Biggest mystery in history. And I think I can explain them. And I know I can explain them, and I can show exactly what they are. And then you make your determination, is Roger right or is Roger wrong? Well, we go find out. Okay, my friends, if you love giants and you love history and you love to find out truth, you're in the right place. Because we're going to be talking about the Baigong pipes. And they claim it's been a giant, one of the biggest mysteries in history. And I could see where they would say that. Because who would make iron pipes? They're talking 150,000 years ago, a million years ago, whatever. They have a number here I've never seen before. Hold on, let's take a look. All right, here's the story. The Baigong pipes are one of the greatest mysteries of all times. For more than a decade, investigators have been on to determine who built these iron pipes, whatever that is, 150,000 years ago, I don't know, when humans had hardly learned how to use fire. China's Qinghai province near Mount Baigong is a mysterious pyramid with 3 caves consisting of iron pipes. It leads up to a saltwater lake nearby. The pipes, which are visible under the lake bed and can also be found on the shore, are presumably, whatever that number is, 150,000, a million, 500,000, I don't know, years old. Archaeologists believe that the pipes were used to supply water to the pyramid, since so many of them have been found on the shore of the nearby Lake Tonson. And here's what it looks like where they found them. Anybody knows mud fossils can see this is like a membrane in here. Now, and down in here is where they found them. That's red blood. That's what they look like, and I'll show you some more in a second. Now it says the pipes, being that old, make it hard to accept the fact they were built by humans, as historians now believe the humans inhabited the region 30,000 years ago. According to Chinese historians, the only humans that were around that time were nomads. Thus, the possibility of nomads taking out time to build these pipes and installing them seems extremely unreasonable and illogical. So, with a gap of around 120,000 years, okay, so this should have been 150,000, because the 30,000 add on to that, make it 150,000. So, with a gap of 120,000 years, we are left with one question: who then was laying down iron pipes there? Well, first of all, are they iron pipes? They look like iron pipes, but are they? Who knows? Listen to this. A few theories. There is a new, easy way to explain the existence of these pipes in the badly eroded pyramid. First of all, is it a pyramid? Let's say it is. There's a new way to explain them in this badly eroded pyramid. A few theories are afloat which might give a hint as to when these were built. Well, hold on. Since there is no easy way to explain the existence, so there's no way really they can explain it. The Chinese Academy of Social Sciences isn't ruling out the possible existence of aliens, ancient extraterrestrials, whoever, who have done this. It's worth looking into, and science would have to determine if there's any truth. I want to talk to the people at the Academy of Social Sciences, because I have the answer. Yang Ji was quoted telling a Xinhua news agency, well, what are they finding? They're finding these pipes, and they say they're iron pipes. Well, I say maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe they're pipes like this, iron pipes. Maybe they just like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, that is no iron pipe. I'm going to show you exactly what it is in a microscope. That, my friends, is no iron pipe. So there it is right there in a picture in my camera. Now, again, it's this pipe right here. This end here is kind of opened up. This end here still has a ton of blood in it. And this is in the microscope of this exact same piece. Now let's look at the anatomical. It's just identical. It's absolutely identical. That's because it is an artery. This is the structure of an artery wall. 100% exactly identical. It's because it's an artery. From a gigantic creature. Now they say they found these in Louisiana. This came out of, I think, my friend Greg Morrison sent this to me. I think it was from, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, somewhere down in that area, somewhere on the East Coast, southern East Coast. And that, my friends, at one time pumped blood through something big. That's all I can tell you. All right, listen to this now. It says the investigation into iron pipes began in 2002, and a few researchers believe that it was left over by a prehistoric civilization, but their techniques were lost to the humans that came in to inhabit the region later. What is interesting is that the civilizations to which the pipes could have possibly belonged can't be tracked, because there was no civilization, it was creatures. And what is perplexing the Chinese historians and scientists even more so is that there are strangely shaped stones protruding from the ground, and the scientists aren't sure what these are made of. Also, whether or not these stones mean anything is still to be determined. 8% material of the pipes also could not be determined when tested. It's really strange that we are unable to determine what the pipes and stones are made of despite such advanced technology. Now check this out. These are the same kind of little tubes sticking out of the ground here and there, bigger ones, smaller ones, little bitty ones, all different style. Now let me show you something of what happens to a fossilized lung when it erodes a little bit. That's what happens right there. Exact same thing. That's a fossilized lung. And it's eroded, and the little bits and pieces are sticking this way and that way. But this was a lung. Now, going back to this lung, we see the exact same thing. All these little tubes coming out. And when you start looking at the Baigong pipe, they are these arteries, and this tubing, this plumbing. And here's what it looks like. This right here, that's this. All right, that's this artery in a microscope. So this piece right here is from the very outside, and then it goes in another layer, another layer, another layer, another layer, and then you're into where the blood is. Whoops. All right, oops, hold on one second. Little video tragedy there. Okay, now, so what are we looking at in there? That's all blood. That's blood. That's what was coursing through this thing's veins, or arteries. All right, now I sanded that flat right there so that I could get the picture in a microscope, and that's it. You have to have them wet and everything. You really can't see it all that well. But this is what they say. They looked at it and they said, it looks like it's got growth rings, so they must be trees. And then he said, well, there's no roots. And then, well, maybe the roots went away somehow and left the trees. And then the other ones say, I don't know, they got all kinds of different theories. They can't account for it because their eyes aren't big enough. Yeah, see, this one says the other theory is aren't pipes at all, but fossilized tree roots. A geological theory states that under certain circumstances, tree roots can undergo the transformation of soil into rock. That's very, very, very rare. Trees dissolve. Flesh is a whole different story. Flesh and blood is a different story. Trees, cellulose, they did not make it. Especially during this hot water flood that we had, that created all these giant creatures. There was a disastrous hot water flood, and it boiled the flesh off of most of them, and all you're left with basically is the organs in a very eroded condition in many cases. In my case, they are not in a bad condition at all. They're almost flawless. It depends on where you were on the Earth and where the impact site of this comet was that hit our Earth and created the Triassic zone, the red bed, the gray clay, and the black cap worldwide. The red bed is boiled flesh. The gray clay is the leftovers of everything else that was a little heavier, lasted a little longer. The red flesh boiled right off, so that went right to the bottom as mud. Then the gray clay, then the black cap as all the combustion in the atmosphere and the fallout from volcanoes and everything else covered everything. And that's the Triassic era. Worldwide, they know this. They say it happened during a great worldwide flood. All right, now, they're saying these might be tree roots, but they're not. That's not really believable. However, they have also been found in Louisiana. Scientists and historians are baffled, have no clue as to how these curious cases of the 150,000-year-old pipes can be cracked. Well, I just cracked it. Whatever the case, whether the out-of-place artifact were built by aliens or fossilized tree roots or arteries, one thing for sure, they have certainly left everyone amazed and thinking. No, they have left everybody amazed and not thinking. As far as I can see, I've shown this over and over. Nobody seems to take any interest in anything that upsets the balance of their teaching. I'm not kidding you. It's absolutely stunning that they, with the amount of evidence I've presented for 15 years, it's just incredible how academics are going to talk their way out of refusing this kind of evidence for this long. This is going to be fun to see. There is no way they can deny this. Nobody could be that incompetent to miss this for that long. And if that's their defense, well, that's not much of a defense. You see there's an artery right there. And that's the red blood coming down from it. These two guys are looking up saying, gee, I wonder what's going on there. This is all flesh. The Earth was a corpse. It's just a fact. All right, whatever that creature was with these gigantic, what they're looking at, these lungs, really, the ones I saw were pipes all packed together in lungs, very similar to what I was showing you, the lung we had, or my friend Gary had. Now, they also, in the same creature, this is flesh right here, and that is hair. And then they also showed some with the hair and the roots on it and everything else. And they say this is a pyramid and so forth. I'm going to stay away from the pyramid theory. I don't know. There's all kinds of pyramids. You can see them all over the place in China. They're everywhere. So it could very well have been a pyramid. But originally it was a creature's body, and they trimmed it down to make a pyramid, as far as I can tell you, because these pipes and these hairs and all that, that's inside of a creature's body. They didn't put that there in this way. Those and the other one was the artery was growing up through kaolin clay. This is almost like red flesh. This is different than the other stuff. In other words, they showed a whole variety of this creature's body parts, and they were seeing these tubes. Some of them were hairs, some of them were tendons, and some of them were arteries, but they all had a structure to them. All right, anybody that's been following me knows 100% certainty these are tendons. Same with that. Now, the one I just showed a second ago, that one right there, that's the kaolin clay. That one right there, that's kaolin clay. Now, they're showing it as a pyramid with a hole in the center. I don't know why they decide that, but it's kaolin clay, that white powdery stuff, yellowish looking, and there's a red spot of blood there. They just don't understand what they're looking at, and they're making all kind of speculations about. See, that's a hair. That right there is a hair, and that's the hair root right at the bottom, and these segmentations are hairs. I can show this very, very clearly. And here's another one of these tubes, just like what I have here. Same thing. They all change a little bit in different ways. They're not all exactly the same, but that's a hair, and this is red flesh. So they're looking at all different places in this area because it was just a big creature. It had blood in it, and it had all the other parts the creature has. All right, so we know we got tendons. We know we've got this pipe. I'm telling you, that's a hair, and I'll show you why I can make that claim. Tendons and so forth. So they really don't know what they're into, but they're into a creature's body. They just don't understand it. All right, so let's go deeper. All right, the reason I say this is a hair is if you can see those little variegations there, I'll show you a better shot in a minute. And I believe this was the root ball, and that was where the artery came in and it broke off. This also is a hair follicle, and it would be right there. And I'll show you what a hair follicle looks like. And here's where the artery comes in on the side just like that. All right, and I believe that's what we're looking at here, and the ball part around here has disassociated for some reason. This is red blood. This is flesh. And I believe it's brought up to here, and then after that something might have piled up on top. But anyway, and this has the same thing, hair coming out of the top. Well, look at it. I've shown this a bazillion times too. That's erector pili muscle, sebaceous gland. That is a hair, my friends. Okay, my friends, as I showed, this is not nonsense. This is true. This is a hair follicle. That's where the erector pili muscle attaches, right to that spot right there. That is the sebaceous gland right there that slid down. All right, that's the hair follicle that's sticking straight up. I mean the hair shaft. All right, that's where it comes down to the root ball at the bottom, and there's the two little dots, which are the hair papilla, the vein and artery. And that is the same, basically. This is a pretty good size. That's from creatures that I have. I have huge, and some of them are DNA tested and CAT scan and everything else. The parts that I could get into the CAT scan. The two that I had DNA tested were gigantic creatures. One of them was probably about 180 feet tall. I have a fingertip from it. It's 3 feet long. And it's just perfect. It has the fingerprints, the fingernail, everything. So, and it's been DNA tested. And another one is the hand. It's the left hand sticking. It's about broken off about here. And I have fingers from it and knuckles and everything else. And that same thing, human DNA. And it was between 3 and 4 feet wide. It's sort of splayed out. Now, so this is not in question anymore. Now, how big were they? Well, they got pretty damn big. They got very big, and they were dragons. There were dragons in the land in those days, and there was giants in the lands in those days. They were everywhere. And you see this area here? I just been investigating this. That's out here. This is out west. Look at this damn thing. And this whole area, this is all biology. That's not just hills and valleys. This is the whole thing is biology. This, I don't know what it is, but I thought it was going to be the whole snake, but it's just a tiny little piece. You see that? If you're into mud fossils, you understand these layers and all of these. This is the scales of something, or maybe a digestive system. I don't know what. Originally, I thought it was the scales of a dragon, but then I started looking around, and this is all biology. That's not just accidental runoff, and a lot of it is blood red. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's no question whatsoever. This is biological patterning. And that, again, I'm not sure, but the one that I saw here from Myron Cook, there's no question. And he's looking at this thing, wondering what this is. I said, didn't you see this? He said, oh, those are just flat irons. I said, no, those are dragon scales, man. Or they sure look like it to me. You know, there's some form of scales. I don't care what, dragon, lizard, I don't care what it is, but they're scales. See, I think this is what they're looking at there, is some of the stuff. Not all of it, the Baigong pipes. They're in a place where there's all kinds of different creatures. Remember I talked about the kaolin clay, the kaolin clay? That's it. It's a real fine. They make fine china out of this. It's a slip clay. They call it slip clay. It's just as smooth and slippery as you can get, and that's on your face and so forth. Now, there's a lot of hair in this one, but on like a woman's face, and in certain areas in the neck and so forth, you have this kind of kaolin clay. It's just a real fine, slippery clay. It's part of your flesh. Okay, this is headline news. They found a new species of dinosaur with a new distinctive eyebrow. Boy, that's big major news. That just came out today. This stuff I have for 15 years, nobody cares. It makes no headlines whatsoever. It's absolutely incredibly amazing that academia can get away with this. And the reason is, it supports all these ancient texts, which makes basically everything they said irrelevant now. I mean, literally everything. That's the key. I mean, geology, history, mythology, anthropology, archaeology, all the different mysteries that they have. We can't, anomalies, you know, the universe, and even the light research that I did shows that none of that stuff is true. Light slows down, light speeds up. Evolution and creation, totally, and evolution doesn't work. Creation, something created it. Because this did not happen from slime all making itself fit together to turn into creatures and human beings and all of the stuff we see. So right now we got a problem. We got a major issue with education. And somebody put in, I think it was into Chat GPT or something like that. He put in, what Roger says is right? What would be the consequence of that? And it came back with an answer, said everything we know has to change. We need all new books, new teachers. Now, if the teachers had done their job, we wouldn't need new ones. They'd be teaching it right now. They'd be talking about it. They'd be discussing it. Now, it's a tragedy that they didn't sign on board early. I'd like to have them explain that, because to me, it was self-interest over their job, over doing their job correctly. And I've been railing against this. I mean, I'm sorry to have to be railing against it, because it'll never change unless somebody actually stands up and says something. I have no power. I'm just a voice, but I have so much evidence. Is no denying anything that I'm showing. DNA, CAT scans, specimens. I understand the whole process. Velikovsky recorded all the history, and there was almost an impact of a giant fiery comet that almost hit Earth, and what it did, it forced all of the oceans to spit up all their salacious ooze. Look it up, on the bottom, and silicon came to the surface, mixed with everything, created all my mud fossils. Yale University, who I gave all my research to years before this, wrote a paper on it. The exact same paper I wrote, basically, and their paper said this: exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures promoted by silica-rich oceans. The silica came up from the bottom. Worldwide, 3 layers: red bed, gray clay, black cap. And they say in their paper here, they say this happened before there was any other life. Earliest community of sea creatures. No, the whole Earth was a sea at that time. It's worldwide. And they're saying they're taking credit for a Yale-led research team. I gave them all of this years before this. And they're saying that there's 540 million years ago. It's right on the top of the surface of the Earth. It's found worldwide, which is this Triassic. And then they say they're creatures were small or up to a meter large. No, they were much, much, much bigger. And they lived on a sea floor. The whole world was obviously then a sea floor, because they're found worldwide. Now, I said they're outright bizarre, these creatures, many of them, and do not resemble any organism alive today. That's quite true. I don't see a whole lot of dragons running around in my backyard. And then he said, we would like to understand their relationship to the animals evolved afterwards. Are these creatures some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? Yes, they were. They were monsters and dragons and giants, and they have to be wiped from the surface of the earth. Are these what they call them Edakara organisms? That's just a name from where they found their bits and pieces. Are they some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? Yes, they are. Or are some others new? Do the ancestors of these animals still colonize the oceans? Some do. And they say they were trying to figure out how these soft-bodied creatures, which were entirely soft-bodied, they lived before shells, teeth, or bones. That's totally wrong, absolutely wrong. And I showed them all this. They had no clue. This is just unbelievably incompetent, and I see it as almost criminal that they didn't do their job, and they're supposed to be fiduciaries of their students and look out for their best interests. They're taking tons of money from the students. Anybody that's a fiduciary is supposed to do things for you that make things better for you, and you give them something. And you give them your entire trust, which is what the academics to get. They want money, and then they want you to say exactly what they tell you to say. That's it. You say, trust me, because I'm never wrong, and I never lie. Well, let me tell you something. They lie like a rug, and they haven't been right as once that I can see. It's total self-interest, and forget about the truth. You see, they say they were all soft-bodied. You never heard anything about this. Nobody's ever talked about this because they put it right behind the scenes and they never publicize it. Because this shows that they were wrong about everything. And as a matter of fact, I gave all this information to NASA too. Now, here's they said organisms were rapidly buried by mud in the process of cementing them around. They're using sand so they can get away from what I said. It's mud. I told them that. I said it was because of the mud. And the mud is just like flesh. It's just nothing more than eroded flesh. It goes right back on the creature. He doesn't even know he's dead. Excuse me. And this is the Derek Briggs. This is the guy I gave all my research to. Papers, DNA tests, CAT scans, all that. And he just fluffed it off and said no. And my paper was written at Yale a year before Yale's paper. And I gave all my research also to, guess who? NASA. Because it's the same stuff as on Mars. Exact same stuff. Exact. Mars crab, Mars Morse code, Mars blueberries. Look them up. Biology. And then NASA gave money to Yale to look into this, which they just wrote a paper, basically the same paper I wrote. Heavy in silica, silica-rich oceans. And they say they can't understand why there was so much silica in the ocean. It never happens there. Silica goes right to the ocean floor. But when it got hit by the comet, it caused the Earth literally to almost stand still. This was all written in these ancient texts. We thought it was just ridiculous, a joke. Big joke. Oh, the Earth stands still. No. If it almost got hit by a field from a comet that was big as the Earth.
Roger.
Hold on. You see this? Again, this is Yale. And the same guy, Derek Briggs, he says the preservation was due to rapid precipitation of silica cements. It wasn't precipitation. There was a lot of precipitation, but that came up from underneath. That's the only way where silica exists, is down on the bottom of the ocean. And facilitated by the high silica saturation state of the oceans prior to the appearance of prolific silica biominerals. They threw all that nonsense in there. It was saturated with the salacious ooze because of the stopping of the Earth by that impact. That's it. Then it mixed with all of the creatures and turned them, a lot of them, into quartz. I have things that are like, that's a heart right there. That is a heart. That's the aorta right there. That's a heart. Almost totally quartz now. Some things turned into a completely quartz. They're just as crystal clear as can be. And they were creatures. It depends on where you were in the world at that time, how long the temperatures, because it boiled the oceans, literally boiled, they say, the oceans. And this was all recorded. This was not that long ago. These were recorded by all the cultures on Earth. And Velikovsky did that, collected all that information and wrote a book called Worlds in Collision, and the academics made the publisher, who was Macmillan, take the book off the bookshelves after being 11 weeks as #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. #1, 11 weeks in a row. They took the book off. And they destroyed Velikovsky. After that, he was destroyed. People don't know his name anymore. They have no clue what he said or what he did. And that would be the story, except for the fact that I have all the evidence to prove that he was right. And I did. I wrote a book about him before this. I wrote a book about him in 2015 because I was so upset with Yale. And I called it Minds in Collision. Mudfossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. And that was, this was in 2016. They wrote their paper. Mine was in 2015. Okay, my friends, we have so much to get into, but some giant bodied creatures were just absolutely stunningly giant, and some were small and tiny. I mean, really tiny. And everything in between. But as far as I can determine, there wasn't anything that didn't start with being biology. So we're going to do, it's just going to keep going forever. And I have so much to show you that I haven't shown you before. There's a ton of things. You know, it's all related to the same thing, that there was giants, there was dragons, there was all the things they talked about. And I have all this physical evidence to support Velikovsky's claims of what they had recorded. It wasn't that he just said one guy here, one guy there said this or that. No, they all virtually had the same story about this almost impact by a extremely fiery comet that took 7 days coming towards the Earth, and it just kept cooking the Earth, and everybody was jumping in the oceans and the lakes and trying to stay from burning up, and it didn't help. They boiled them. And what happened in areas, some areas, like the area I'm in, is a basin. It's just like a bowl. It boiled and it settled there. And then everything just settled out, and then the creatures just landed on top of the red bed, the gray clay, the black cap. And I have creatures that are right in the middle. I'm right down the street from Dinosaur State Park, 6 miles away. And they have Brazilian little footprints, a tiny little thing. I mean, they think they're big dinosaur. Whoa, big deal. That's, you know, I have a 3-foot fingertip. And I've tried contacting them too, and nobody's interested. So, and it's DNA tested. You know, why will these people not look at it? And I can tell you why. It's because they're giant human beings. This changes everything they've said. They cannot live with that loss of status. And I don't blame them. I understand. I understand. The Rogerian argument would say, let's arrive at a common ground. I understand this disrupts your life. I want truth. All right, I have the thing that will disrupt your life, yes. If we embrace that thing, we can get truth in the middle. If you keep standing off to that side, you will be disgraced. And I'm kind of seeing that right now. Because I know things take time, but 15 years with the evidence I have, not acceptable. All right, I love you all. Thanks, bye. Okay, this is my paper from 2015, submitted to Derek Briggs, about fascia-facilitated fossilization. That is mud fossils. And the whole thing goes through, if you die and buried quickly and stay wet and compacted in fine mud, fascia does not know you are dead. It keeps you protected. It's the cause of mud fossils. They're exact copies of the original. And it goes on to talk about how it happens because of the fascia and the collagens and so forth. And then about the silicon, 50 times the silicon. And then read the paper from Yale. It's the exact same stuff. It's exactly the same thing. It's the silicon, exceptional preservation, soft-bodied creatures promoted by silica-rich oceans. Exactly what, and I gave it to Derek Briggs, 2015. And then I wrote this book, too, because I was as frustrated as you could possibly be at this point. I was at least 5 years into it. at that point, 2015. So we're going 15 years ago. I pretty much started into that, and nobody would listen, so I went all the way I could. I went to the CAT scans and DNA tests, everything you could possibly be done, chemistry, all the way down the line, anatomy, and it all was correct, and it was refused. That's just not right. All right, this is the book I wrote. It was published in 2016. They're showing it as February 2016. Yale's paper was later than that. Theirs was November of 2016. Now, when I published my book, it takes a while to get it published, but it was in 2015, and at the same time I had contacted NASA. Now NASA paid them to do their research. Now that's kind of interesting. Why would they pay them to look up Etacarta stuff? And they did. And this is my book right here: Mudfossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. This is a story of tragedy, my friends. It says, the discovery of mud fossils a few years ago led on a journey only be described as wild and crazy. Evidence uncovers, discussed, and many links to the videos that prove the claims are made. Now, in that book, virtually everything I took out because they destroyed it, and they forced me to remove the stuff. They didn't force me, but pretty damn close. And I had, at the same time, way back then, I had 7 CAT scans, DNA tests, and I claimed one was approximately 50 feet tall, and another was, I would think, around 200 feet tall. The chemistry, the lab work was all done. The DNA was done. And Emanuel Velikovsky had all of the original text from everywhere in the world that said the same thing. There was this terrible event. And the Celtics called it the Frightener, I think they call it. The thing that almost hit the earth, they called the Frightener. And there was another one that was calling it the Destroyer. And it's just so obvious when you see the 3 layers worldwide, and then the fossilization process was because of basically cooking them, boiling off the flesh. And what was left, look at this. Hold on. Well, I can't find it now. But anyway, the stuff that was left was just, a lot of it was lungs and all kinds of stuff. Hold on one second. This lung was DNA tested, CAT scanned. Blood literally flows out of there. It's saturated with blood. Laid flat on the ground like this after the flood. That's why it's so flat. Virtually all my stuff is completely flat on one side. It literally boiled the body away from the body parts. And what was left, the heart was under here too. The heart was laying right there. This is a left human lung, and it's human, it was DNA tested, and right there would have been where the heart was. This is pleura, which is the coating of the heart. It's like a fabric bag. I mean, the lung goes like this, goes like that, goes like this, goes like that, or you die. Now, DNA tested, CAT scanned, no question whatsoever human. We have things that I don't know whether they're human or not. It's a no-toe, and we have lots of these. I have at least 4 different styles of feet here. Feet preserve very well because the whole preservative thing is blood. I know it sounds crazy, but the preservative that preserves best is blood because it has the transition metals in it, which are the things that do the nucleophilic invasion and substitution. It's the transition metals that save everything. And they go right through the membranes, which are skin and you know, the membranes around organs and fascia and pleura and all that stuff. So this is some kind of a foot, and it almost looks like it has a sole on the bottom of it, but that's built in. That's part of the actual foot. I'm 99.9% sure of that. And here's where the fibula would go, right there. That's the bone that comes up alongside of the tibia, which sits in that little round cradle right there. And these, I think, have springs inside of them. Most of them, well, I can't say most, but I know some of them do. No question about that. We have one that's completely eroded down. You can see the springs and how they work. Everything is fabulous. That pin right there, I think, is where the springs rock. And there's, like I say, there's several different styles. Now there's double spring loads. I think this could be a single spring. You see that pin? And then you see this? If you step forward, this would rock backwards on that pin and want to restore this way. So this may just be, you know, a pretty nice little deal where that's all it did. I don't know. The other one was very complicated. It had one like hinged up and then the other one hinged up. So it would have a hinge here and then another hinge. Anyway, we got so much to go over, so I'm going to leave it at this for today. But this is why I'm upset with Yale in specific, because when I reported it to them, they actually took my work and presented it as their own, first of all. Secondly, never mentioned my stuff at all, and it supersedes everything that they're showing, and it was before them. That's not right. You look up academic fraud, and they say that to avoid unwanted discoveries is academic fraud. Now, that sure looks like it to me. I can't imagine anybody being not able to see the DNA reports, the CAT scans, the specimens, the anatomy. You know, they got people down there who should have been able to understand that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I contacted virtually everybody, all the way up to the president of Yale, and said, why you people are not doing your job? And I started making all kinds of claims about I was going to do this and do that, which, you know, nice things, but, well, not nice things, but legal things. And I never did, of course. How are you going to fight somebody like that? And that's what we're up against now. So if you guys don't step up, you're just going to be paying them for nothing. The only thing you're paying them for is a piece of paper. I went to all these schools for free. I went to Yale, took quantum physics at Yale. I went to Rice University for chemistry. I went to Johns Hopkins for genomics. I went to University of Geneva for particle physics and some other varied other ones. You can go for free, but they won't give you a piece of paper. You don't have the piece of paper, and it's meaningless. You could be as smart as me, but it doesn't matter if you don't have the piece of paper. Just like me, oh, the guy's crazy, and that's what they told me. Don Lincoln from Fermilab tells me I'm a tinfoil hat guy and a disgrace to science, because I show the particles they're looking for, and I can prove those are the particles they're looking for. And now they're finding them too, so he's got me blocked, and they all do the same thing, right across the board. Doesn't matter. It's no more science. Knowledge is refused. And there's all kinds of documents in the ancient past to say this is exactly what's going to happen. There'll be a time when it's not tolerated to be honest. And that's from the government on down, right to the bottom. I know I hate to keep going down that road, but boy, I tell you, every time I keep talking, if I keep going down the road, that's the only place the road leads. What am I going to say? Everything's fine? Don't worry. Be happy. Ignorance truly is bliss, my friends. And knowledge is a burden. It really is. You'll find that out if you haven't already. All right, I love you all. Thank you. Goodbye.